have everyone yet? It's pretty. All right, let's get this going. You want to do the slides? I've got the thing.
You got the thing?
I've got the thing. Your slides.
My slides. They're all mine. Next slide, please. So at this point, you've probably been to a working group and you have probably seen the new Note Well. How many of you have seen the new Note Well? How many of you read the new Note Well? Not quite as many hands. I'll give you just.
I'm curious how many people have seen the old one so far. I can't even get it.
Well, if you'll notice, the old one had 2 pages. One was like the original IP stuff, and the second page was more behavioral stuff. Now these are actually merged into one beautiful poem written to IETF participants and how they should think about the world. So please note well, the new Note Well. Next slide, please. Okay, quick meeting tips. So if you are here in person, please sign in via the data tracker to get into Meet Echo. That lets us keep some understanding of how many people come here, and that sets the size for the next meeting room. Of course, if you are here, do keep your audio and video off. We don't need that many versions of all the extra people. If you are a remote participant, also make sure your audio and video are off. Unless you're presenting during a session, as always, headsets are strongly recommended. Next slide, please. With that, first very critical point of meeting administrivia. Do I have a volunteer for scribe today? Yes! Nick, you're awesome. Thank you, sir. Okay, next slide, please. So we have 90 minutes. We have about 75 minutes worth of discussion. So if we go over a little bit on some things, that's fine, but we may end a touch early. We will see. How many of you are new to SPICE? Great. Okay, good, because we have a quick little introduction as to what it is and what it isn't. And then we'll dive straight into the documents. And it looks like we have all of the document authors here to talk about these things. Awesome sauce. Next slide, please. What is it? Well, in our charter, it's very clear that we exist to fill some interesting gaps in the digital credentials and presentation space. We are developing some digital credential profiles that support different use cases. A lot of the use cases that came into this group were a little bit more on the supply chain side than the human side. And so you'll see things like more CBOR here than there has been JSON here. We are not going to get into a religious war about that. It works in different use cases. Next slide, please. We are quite interested in the security and privacy implications of the credentials and work that we're doing. And we have some very specific privacy and security considerations around confidential computing, remote attestation, et cetera. This group is, I guess I would say heavily dependent, partnered with, admiring of, dependent on several other groups within the IETF, obviously OAuth, RATS, a handful of others. So it's kind of like a whole family affair. Next slide, please. Yeah, and these are like the main groups I would identify of if you want to see how we're working together overall and get a complete picture. SPICE isn't trying to do all the things. We're trying to do something very specific, but it will fit in this broader ecosystem of work within this standards body. What we're not doing, we are not doing general key discovery. We are not doing new cryptographic primitives. We are not rolling our own crypto. No, no, not even on a bet. Next slide, please. We have the usual working group resources. We've got our mailing lists. We've got a GitHub repository. And with thanks to Whimsy, we entirely ripped off their model for a lovely website. It looks very nice. also available on GitHub. Yep. And with that, I believe we are ready to dive right in, starting with the use cases.
Oh, no, there's no X.
You'll just have to guess.
Hey everyone, Brent Zundell. Happy to report my knees are covered this time. It was just a little too spicy in Madrid. We're talking use cases. Use cases draft is doing great. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. A lot of intro slides. The use cases document is an informal draft. It's never going to be an RFC unless this group completely changes its mind. It's basically, hey, here's some things that you can do in this 3-party model, even though there's probably more parties than that, and the vocabulary is going to change after the architecture document comes together a little bit better. But this is what the use cases doc is now. Here's the abstract. It's some use cases. If you read it and you're like, hey, my use case isn't here, let us know. We're happy to add use cases. If you read it and you're like, that use case doesn't make any sense, you should change it, we accept PRs. Next slide, please. Since IETF 123, we got a mobile driver's license use case, thanks to Tony Nadelin. I finally figured out what embedding credentials in other data formats meant and wrote up a use case for that one. We added Mr. Jones as a co-author, and yeah, that's what we did. Next slide, please. Next steps, we have one open issue that's currently assigned to Mr. Tim Capali because he volunteered to do a digital wallets use case. And like I said, if anybody else wants other use cases, we're happy to add them. And you know, we always respond to review in time. And but at this point, it's pending somebody saying, hey, digital wallets or anything else. Use cases is where it's at and is going to stay there without much changes, because I'm not going to pay attention to it much if people aren't telling me that they want me to pay attention to it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Good. We can talk about some other things then. You can step aside and then step back. Because here's the thing.
Brent Z, globally unique enterprise identifiers. This is glue. Next slide, please. Here's what we're talking about today. We're going to do a recap of what they are, tell you what we did, and then hopefully have a bit of a discussion about the URN namespacing that we built into the draft and how maybe we should change it. And then we'll talk next steps. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so why glue? There are statements that need to be made about organizations. There are lots and lots of different official ways to talk about those organizations. Glue is a way to glue those different things together. So if you have an LEI or you have a United States tax ID or some other organizational thing, you can namespace it using glue, have a handy registry to go to look those things up, and in general have a little bit better unity around identifying organizations. Some of the data models require URNs that we're using, and so that's kind of why we went that route. So that's why glue. Happy to talk more about it if folks want to, but next slide, please. Here's what they look like. At this point, it says URN : IETF : spice : glue : and then this, what we're calling a external authority identifier, the IRS EIN, and then the final one would be that identifier. As you can see, it's a pretty long prefix, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. Next slide. Here are the 4 current initial registry schemes that have been registered or that we're planning to register as part of this draft. If you have a scheme and you like it and it's not on this list, please talk to us. We'd love to know which ones you want in here. But this is just an initial set.
questions now?
I'm happy to take questions as they come. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Ori Steele. So my question is, these folks are all kind of well known for providing identifiers for lots of different organizations. What if you're a vendor that has created their own identifiers for businesses in a region or maybe across several regions, but your identifiers are not globally unique unless you consider the region? Is it possible for vendors to register their way of identifying businesses? How can other folks add themselves to this? Like, what are the registration requirements for me to add my company's way of representing legal entities in my region of operation?
Excellent question. So the combination of the scheme and the identifier needs to be globally unique. So as long as so if the identifier itself isn't globally unique, that's fine. You add the scheme to it, and now, yay, it's globally unique. As long as that combo is, then, and that's what the draft says to do, as with registration. And yes, anybody who wants to register their scheme, cool. They should be registered.
Hi, Tim Gagan. On the previous slide, the schema that was laid out, thank you. Sorry, I'm just picking at the IRS-EIN part. Isn't that rather US specific, or perhaps this is a term of art I'm just not aware of?
This is just an example for how to conceptualize what a glue looks like, and this slide's existed for years and years, and we haven't updated it.
Right, so like nobody would need to go ask the American IRS for like permission to participate in this.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
I mean, if you want to be identified by the IRS and then use that as a glue, yes, but to use glue, no, you don't need to use the IRS.
Hi, this is Henk. I hope that's enough. Henk Birkholz. And there's a gazillion ways of doing global uniqueness. First of all, it's only intended to be global unique because guarantees requires a strict authority. And so some of these are registries, so then there's a strict authority. Sometimes they aren't. So I think that has to be taken into account. Then there was a notion of geofencing. I just call it that because, local parts of the world, that is a very, very, very hot topic everywhere. And I think it requires a dedicated section how to do that. Because everybody will be like, oh, I don't want to be global, so this is not for me. The G in glue is a little bit distracting. It is helping you as a geolocated entity to be globally unique. So that helps you to be differentiated from another geolocation on the world. So actually the G is a good thing, but it doesn't look like a good thing always. So I assume that the local geofencing mechanisms that are arising currently should be addressed. And that is a part of glue that would help it look useful and sometimes not scary to people, I think.
Okay. We do talk a little bit about that in the draft. We've hesitated to formally introduce geofencing because we want to keep the identifiers concise, but so the guidance in the draft is to do geofencing as part of the scheme registration. Hey, I'm my co-author.
Hello. So you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've been out of this for a little while, but I don't believe glue is about unique identifiers or globally unique identifiers. They're about global identifiers. It's really important, right? We are not trying to uniquely identify anyone. What we are allowing you to do is go the other direction. We're allowing you to claim an identifier using a namespaceable space. And so it's a small distinction, but an important one. I might have 50 different glue IDs, and some of them might be wrong, right? We're not binding this to a credential. We're not binding it to a key. We're simply allowing a way for someone to say, these are my identifiers, and have it not be something that every single consumer of the identifier has to understand the context for because it's part of the identifier.
Right. Each individual glue identifier is intended to be unique, but every unique organization can have multiple identifiers.
Yes. So I think I'm in wild agreement with Pam, but she described the problem from a very different angle. But I think it will result in the exact same solution. So that's a good thing, I think. So we can have notions of both in the text, and it will align well, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I am Hank.
Next slide. And so what we did since last IETF, we made some clarifications to the scope of the registry. We strengthened the guidelines for uniqueness, added a little bit of normative language there, improved privacy considerations, made other improvements, updated my affiliation once again. Next slide. All right, so as we were bringing this concept to the group and looking for adoption, we received, so originally we were like, hey, it's glue : I think there's supposed to be some slashes in there. That's what we wanted to do. We're like, hey, we're going to make a URI scheme. And folks were like, no, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. And so we said, okay, cool. URN namespacing, that makes sense because this is a URN. This is an identifier. And so we jumped into what we thought was mimicking, what I believe was OAuth. We said, okay, URN : IETF : well, we should have a group identifier in there, spice : then us, glue, okay, and then the rest of it. And then Ayana came back and said, well, that's actually not quite right. If you want to fit under the IETF namespace, the only way for a group to do that is to fit under the params namespace. And then so it would be URN : IETF : params : spice : glue : and the rest of it. : There's some problems with this. Next slide, please. I'm going to go with the second one first. That's really long. And if we're wanting this to be used in places where space matters, then we'd have to expect people to jump through hoops in order to use them. And I don't like the long. In the second place, these are identifiers. These aren't parameters. And so putting them under the params sub namespace also doesn't really make sense. However, we could just create a URN namespace for glue, and it would be URN : glue and the rest of it. And that, I like that one. It makes sense to me. Option 2 is make our own thing, and I don't think we should do that. Next slide, please. And there are precedents. These are just the 4 that jumped out as I briefly scanned the list. There's OIDs, UUIDs, public IDs, LEX. These are all identifiers that have been registered as a URN namespace. And so we would be following that precedent if we made this change. And that's my recommendation, but I'd love to hear thoughts from this group.
Rohan?
Hi, Rowan May. So the document that defines what goes under the IETF space is, it's a little bit old. The person who authored that document is still active in the IETF. I think we could go find Barry and see if we could maybe get that changed. So I think a third option is we should at least investigate whether we can update the document and get something that doesn't involve params. I think that would be a nice option. And I also don't object to, URN : glue either. But I think it'd be nice if their IETF was in there somewhere, because then people, when they look at it, they're like, what is this glue thing? But if it says IETF glue, people are going to be like, oh, okay, I can probably trust that,
Thank you.
Tim?
I'm not even going to adjust it. No. I think we should just do URN glue. I agree. That's far too long. We've talked about this, and people aren't super thrilled about using these long names. I kind of agree with having IETF in there, but I don't think it's a deal breaker.
Thank you.
Martin?
So, wow, someone's really tall. URN glue is probably sensible here. I don't have an opinion on that. I do want to point out that your authority form one sort of implies that there's some sort of resolution involved, whereas having a URN prefix is useful in declaring that you are just naming a thing, and that's what these are for, and that's quite useful. So I would probably lean toward your thing. You need a slash rather than a colon in your second one, but that's okay. You're not going to go there.
Yeah, the second one is ugly.
Okay. It's going to be Mike, Ori, and then Karsten.
Mike Jones. I am the third person in a row to say just use URN glue.
Ori?
Ori Steele, also in favor of URN glue.
Yeah,
Okay.
not just more, not to get too much consensus here. You could use a UI scheme. Yeah, there are many reasons to put this useless word UN there, but if you look at other examples like DID, you can get a UI scheme. There are some 400 UI schemes in the registry right now, as far as I remember, and they're easy to get. And yes, there should not be a slash there on example 2, because it's not an authority at all. It's not meant for resolution. But what the DID people could do, you could do too.
Thank you.
Werner?
Yeah, I'm confused because we have already a namespace, for instance, for LEIs. It's urn.:LEI. So which one should be used? If there is already an existing namespace that has been created a couple of years ago, and the other one is we discovered in the context of RDAP that there's more than one thing to say. Saying the namespace is one thing. Yes, you need to know the namespace, but you need to know for what purpose is that identifier being used in the specific context. To give an example about this doubt, let's say if you have an object in a domain registry, for instance, you can say the registrar has a certain, LEI, or you can say the registrant has a certain LEI, but let's say the object is kind of held by both. So what do you mean? So you have to have a way to say more than just a namespace. I'm not sure if either one of those actually can address that.
Do you think that additional information needs to be part of the identifier or in how the identifier is used?
Well, in RDAP, we're kind of lucky that we have two fields, like public ID has type and identifier. So the idea would probably be to put the identifier starting with URN such and such, and the type would say for what purposes it is being attached. But I'm not sure if that would actually fit in other patterns.
I think it could definitely be used that way, but the draft doesn't talk about usage at all at this point. It's just, here's this identifier, and I think creating parameters for how to use the identifier is the next step.
Okay.
Mic goes down again. I just wanted to point out, this is a really good question. The question of URN::LEI embedded in a URN::glue. I mean, we got to make sure that works. But I think the question, the whole reason this exists is not for those who own the identifiers, but for those who have to store them. And so it really comes down to if your whole database is full of LEI numbers, then that's an easy answer, and you can use that. You probably don't need the extra context potentially. But so I think there's maybe a test, which is, is it bidirectional? Can you embed a Dun and Bradstreet number, for example, into an LEI, right? If you can, then you can just use your URN LEI. And if you can't, then you may have to go to something like a glue ID, because you can encompass, in theory, not that I've tried it, both LEIs and Dun and Bradstreet numbers. So I don't know if that helps or at least sparks some conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. Keys trained?
Yeah, that was the conversation I was hoping to have. It sounds like roughly there's support for going URN glue. So we'll make that change and present it to the list. And happy to take any other questions if folks have them.
We're good. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Chair.
Next one.
That's a nice feature.
What?
They scroll the list for you.
Oh, that is nice.
Is this you, Mike? You want to talk about this?
Yeah, Beltram is we're talking about it.
Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. Sorry, your name was first on the slides.
Oh yeah, it's out of courtesy. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello. So this time we're back again. So even though last time we proposed working with Pascal in Madrid, there was a lot of reviews. Very good review, by the way. So I decided there are more questions that I wanted to bring to this working group here. So next slide, please. Or can I?
I don't think that works.
Okay. So next slide, please.
It's not attached to anything.
Yeah. So here's a quick recap of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to map the 19 claims of OpenID Connect standard to the CBOR Web Token Claims INI registry. So they are all the claims you know, except the sub claim, which is already registered in this registry. And so we're trying to register them as standard actions, so that they fit in the 2 byte. So that they are represented as 2 bytes in order to save space, because those claims are pretty prevalent and they are used for anything that pertains to PII. So next slide, please. So here is like an extract of all the claims. So this is cropped, but like you got 19 of them. And the idea is to register them as best as possible into CBOR Web Tokens. So next slide, please. So ever since Madrid, so as I said, there's been a lot of reviews, very helpful reviews. So it led to some fixes, and version 2 of the draft has been submitted. So among those issues closed, they've been like we have maps better the description from IDC. So for example, the issue 17 is about birthday rules. So that was we just like copy pasted the description in the IDC into that. Same for the verified claims, so which are email verified and phone number verified. So now it's a direct copy of what's in OIDC. The issue 18 is about, so I learned along the way that in CBOR Web Tokens, timestamp can be floats. So that's the one fixing that. So the updated add could be either an integer or float. So that's maybe because of JavaScript, I don't know. But that's the way it is. So now it's updated in the CTDL. And so, as I said, there's been a lot of review, but like there were 2 outstanding ones that I wanted to brought to this working group. So they are, I don't know, we'll see. So I have 2 questions with this working group. So next slide, please. So the first one was like something that started as, so if I have to summarize it in essence, basically, it's asking what do we do if like tomorrow there is a change in your IDC or an addition in your IDC? How can I sync this change to this INI registry? So basically, like new claim is added, some is changed, and also it continued in asking like how could we have some kind of shared registry between CWT and JWT? Like when that was, I think the path that was took by JSON Web Proofs, where like there is like going to be shared registry where you like declare the description of the claim and its type, and then it's going to be mapped to both JWT and CWT. So that's a question I'm going to bring to this working group so that we can conclude on that one. My recommendation on that one is that, so first one about syncing OIDC changes. So OIDC ain't going to change. That ship has sailed. So maybe there's no need to be able to sync anything that comes from OIDC. And about the second point about like having a shared registry for both JOT and COT is like it's gonna be tricky, because you're gonna have some corner cases where some field is gonna be of a different type in COT because there's not a one-to-one mapping between JOT and COT types for the claims. So probably you're gonna end up duplicating all the columns. So maybe it's not worth it. But I would like to hear what the working group has to say about that matter.
Hi, Mike Jones. I'm being partially to blame for some of this. I made Karsten laugh. Okay, I've achieved my goal for the week. You're right. OpenID Connect is final. It's not going to change. The Connect claims are intentionally in the IANA registries. And so the extensibility model for JOD claims is the IANA registry. When we were doing CWT, we did attempt to hint to people at least that there should be coordination because there's a field in the CWT claims registry for, is there a corresponding JOT claim, to try to encourage people to do both where it makes sense. And I think that's worked okay. It's good that you started this draft to catch up some claims in CWT that are needed for real use cases. Shared registries, I don't know, I'm skeptical. It's fine to put instructions to registrants and designated experts that they should consider registering in both places where it makes sense, but I don't think that's the job of this draft. This draft copies a bunch of specific claims from one place to another.
Yeah, in addition, like those claims are already registered in the JOT registry, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can close that issue 26, and next slide, please. Okay, so for this one, my intent is not to open a Pandora box, but there has been a review, like a comment about this gender claim. And so I have 3 or more 2.5 questions about this one. So first, you see the OIDC definition of the gender claim on top, and then below what this draft has currently defined. So the first question is about what's the actual semantic of this gender claim. Is it the birth gender or the chosen gender of the person being identified by that? So currently, like the OIDC definition is a bit elusive about that one. And as you know, we need to have like strict definition, because this, like the choice I made in this draft is to use the chosen gender as default. But then you might also think that maybe in some medical use cases, you might need to have the birth gender. So like the question is like, should we on top of that also declare a birth gender? And then the second question is about the recommended values. So you can see here that OIDC recommends either male or female. But as you know, now we kind of have a broader definition of gender, so they can be more strings that fit into the definition. So the question is like, should we keep recommending something, or should we be liberal about it? And then the application decide what to put in that. So the issue is, of course, interoperability, because if we have to interpret between different systems, having like a different set of default values. And the half question is about if we recommend some values, maybe since we are now in CBOR, so we aim to be concise, so should we keep female, male, or just put some letters to be more concise, FNM. So my intent is also not to like create a gender registry in IANA. that we're missing the point, but yeah. So here are my 2.5 questions. I would love to have the working group opinion about those ones.
Hello, this is Rowan. So I think that the semantics, that you brought up the good question about the semantics. I think that the only possible thing that we could do with this is for the semantics to be the semantics according to the issuer. But I will bring up one thing about you mentioned medical gender, like birth gender, medical, this is insufficiently complicated of a structure to convey the different nuances of the medical meaning of, your genomic sex, your birth sex, gender, so I think just having it be based on, I think the only thing that I can think of is to just say that it's up to the issuer to define what it is, and people will know from specific issuers, for example, if they're governments, whether they, whether they're allowing a chosen gender or not.
It depends if you want it to be NIST compliant.
Yes.
It's me again. The goal of this draft is to re-register specific claims that are already defined for JOTS, for CWTs. And not just about this claim, but consistently, I've tried to say the definitions should be exactly the same. And in fact, as you know, there's a PR that I wrote to make the definition for gender exactly the same. So I think we should merge it. Now, Rohan makes a good point that these claims are in some cases underspecified on purpose. The subject claim and the issuer claim by themselves are not fully specified. It's the context in which they're used that causes you to have interpretation rules that make them semantically meaningful. And in some sense, this may be the same case. But I like to keep things simple when we can. If we just have the definition be the same, we're saving us a world of debate that will not end.
And what about like having a concise default values, like recommended instead of female and male?
Oh yeah.
What do you think about that?
That's about interoperability. If we don't do that, and you're in Quebec, they might use homme and femme, which is okay. They might use other words in Chinese. But if you want interoperable values for some mostly well understood identifiers, it's better to say what the identifiers are. So again, that's already in the OpenID Connect definitions. We should copy them in.
Okay, thanks.
Wendy here, just to add to the suggestion that we not say anything more than we need to for interop about this field. That there are enough political overlays that any range of people may want to put on it, and giving humans the option to define their gender as they choose is more important.
Justin Richer. So I think that it is an interesting trap to say that this is what OIDC said, so we should copy it because we said it a long time ago and we obviously can't get better. I think that we can get better. I think that this is an interesting attempt to get better, and that also does lean into the very difficult question of what claims do we define for purposes of interoperability. Gender is a particularly sticky one. It is, as I'm sure most folks here know, culturally defined, and culturally defined differently depending on your culture or set of cultures. And for OIDC, we explicitly said there are two values for interop, and then you can really put whatever else you want in here just to be able to cover anything. I do really like the point, though, of adding the text that this is really only defined in the context of the issuer, and adding that to the other values maybe used piece of this, I think would actually give an appropriate amount of weight to the expectations for interoperability for things like this. Also, it is a very difficult thing to define, to go down the road of societal gender, gender expression, gender identity, sex assigned at birth, and like, don't even get me started on genomic expression, because we'll be here literally all day. Like there are PhDs on these topics that we cannot fit in this line. So this is really hard.
So Justin,
Yes.
are you suggesting that you suggested an addition of text?
Yes.
It's not specific to this though, is it?
No, it's not specific to this, but I think that this is the use case that this is the field that really shines a hard light on
We'll
it.
test it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just to
So-
Mike's point earlier, I think this is true for subject and issuer and all the other ones as well. Right?
Honestly, it's true for first and last name. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like
What does that even mean?
exactly, it doesn't.
So this is, and he runs away anyway. This is. So this is Hank, and the time is blinking. So interoperability first, but addressing this problem is vital. So I agree with Mike. We have to do the interoperability part, be fast and done. And we also have to address the things that are really hard to tackle here. And registry is fine, whatever. It can be symmetric to what is already defined, and but you would have a registry, and then we can go from there and tackle the problem over time and solve it. Maybe, hopefully, at some point, solve it to improve the issue a little bit, because I think, yeah, interoperability first, as Mike said, but interoperability can be achieved with a registry on the other side. And then that registry at some point can be the norm, and then we go to we spread it everywhere, and everything is nice.
Kathleen Moriarty. I think going back to the way we used to handle this kind of thing in the IETF would be useful, and that we create a delineation between what is defined in a standard and how it gets implemented separately, right? And that could be with legal implications. It could be things like this that are different regionally or in different use cases. And that goes to what Ori suggested in the chat. And so I just wanted to say that at the mic, just to make it clear that we used to be very clear about, the IETF is just defining something, and then if it gets used in other ways, legally or politically, that's outside of our scope.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have
So-
another issue you wanted to cover?
This is the
Yes, we did. All
This is the last one. So
the last one is
yeah, next slide. Yeah, are we done
we
with
are,
that?
we are done. I think that's good. We'll
Yeah.
move on to the next.
Yeah. So
Thank
okay, thanks.
Okay. Rohan? Where'd you go?
I feel like I'm off in a corner here. Is there a clicker? Hi, I'm Rowan. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Changes. Okay, so we are getting to the point where the changes in this document that are frequently non-normative, and the ones that are normative are sort of little small corrections and things of that nature. There are no major changes since the last ITF. So 4 normative changes were made. So I added some guidance about the choice of AAD encryption algorithms. Basically, we don't want anything that has tags less than 16 bytes. I fixed an incorrect algorithm in Jose key examples. We added some text to make clear the extent to which a verifier can't process unknown claims. That's sort of marginally normative. And then to make it easier to use the examples as test vectors, I sorted the CBOR map keys in section 4.2.1 of RFC 8494 order. Made a few non-normative changes, including removing the name SPICE from the title of the document. Thank you, Martin. The two big ones are that we moved the some non-normative validation language to its own appendix, and we created a whole new, very large appendix with a terminology mapping between RATs and an SDCOT. So I hope you like that. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do we got in terms of open issues? Well, we got no open PRs. Yay! I'm going to take these slightly out of order. We have two open issues that are about fixing things in the document or in the CDDL or in examples that have to do with using specific numbers that will eventually be assigned by IANA. So one thing that I would like to do, I would like us to get IANA pre-registration pretty soon here. And once we do that, we'll be able to fix these two issues. And I think that we're finally at the stage where we're making few enough changes that it will be pretty easy to do that. We're not likely to have to go back and change things later. So along those lines, we've got a couple of things where we want better text, better examples. So that's issue 144, better examples for tags 58 and 60. 133 described why tagged map key, where tagged map keys are used and why. I need to go do decoy digests. That's just some work. It's mostly about making the tooling so that we can do that in a way that's reproducible. And I did about half of that at the hackathon, and I may even finish that this week. We've got an issue related to the relationship between time claims. Beltran pointed out that you probably should not have a key binding token that has an expiration time that's outside of the bounds of what was in the issued COT that it contains. So we just need to add that. And let's go to the CBOR encoding restrictions. I've got one slide for this. So I didn't want you guys to all fall asleep, so I gave this slide here. So we have an opportunity to add some encoding restrictions and to clarify a few things. Because we are not a COT. So we can say, for a key binding token, we could say, okay, a key binding token is a COT that also has these restrictions. An SDCOT is almost a COT, but also allows these things, and it has these restrictions. So there are a bunch of these kind of restrictions that have been discussed. I've got a specific concrete proposal here. So the first item on that list is to forbid indeterminate length inside of key binding tokens and SDCOTs. It's extremely likely that only attackers are going to be sending us indeterminate length inside of an SDCOT. Another proposal is to suggest a maximum depth. So we could say, thou shalt not have more than, say, 16 levels of nesting. Also, we should say, this is really something that I think already exists in the specifications, but just not, it's sort of implied rather than concretely expressed, but that the time claims that these are finite numbers. If you use a floating point number, please don't put infinity or not a number. And then finally, it is very difficult to do map deduplication when you have maps within maps. So my proposal is that if there are maps with maps inside of map keys, just for SDCOT and key binding tokens, that we bstring encode those. Those are my proposals. There are a couple of other things on this slide which I would be happy to mention. And I would not be sad if some of these appeared as recommendations in the document, but I think they kind of go beyond what these first 4 items suggest. All right. So I'm going to invite Karsten to speak, but I'd like you to please first state for X proposal, I like it or I don't like it, and then you can give a short justification afterwards. Fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Carsten Bormann, I like it. I would fix the terminology because there's only one encoding constraint on this slide and all others are data model constraints. So an encoding constraint changes what you can send over the wire. A data model constraint changes what you can model.
Okay.
And I think it's really important to keep this distinction in mind because
Okay.
the encoding
Good
constraint is
comment.
completely without consequences to what you actually can send. You can only send it in a specific way. But the other ones, if I only get 16 levels of nesting, that is going to influence what I can do with the whole thing.
Okay. But you're okay with the 4 items on this list of proposals? Great. Okay. Mike. Oh, sorry, Beltran.
Wait, Beltran next, and then Mike.
Bertram, I just wanted to give the implementer's point of view, given that, for example, regarding simple values, like I'm writing the implementation of SDK card in Rust, and like the PR adding support for simple value for the major Rust crate took 1 year and it's not yet merged. So adding that is cool. I'm in favor of that, but like implementing those is going to be challenging. Just
Okay.
wanted to bring
So so specifically for this, the 4 items in the list of proposals,
indeterminate length is going to be hard.
to forbid it,
Yeah, to actually enforce it. To
reject it.
Yeah, to reject it. But the few others is going to be rather trivial, I think. But yeah, the first one's going to be tricky, I think.
Yep. Thanks. All right, Mike.
Mike Jones. Trying to limit the time claims to integer values flies in the face of how time claims have always been used. It's perfectly legitimate to have time be fractional seconds, and that's used in practice, so I would not do that.
So
these are just numbers. They're not integers. They've never been integers.
So there is a section in the security considerations section that does not make any statement about whether time should be integers or floating points. But it does say that you may want to change the values slightly. So if the reason for having a floating point number is for precision, then that flies directly in the face of the guidance in our security considerations section.
That's
so
orthogonal in my view. You're changing a data structure, which I think is a bad thing to do.
So the first 4 items, which are the ones that I proposed, how do you feel about those?
I don't understand the reason for the 4th one. I'm fine with the first 3. We can talk offline about the map keys being beast or encoded. The one that I will fight to the death about is requiring any form of canonicalization. Requiring a preferred encoding, shortest length is canonicalization. And if you require it, then implementations that are conforming are required to verify that you use the shortest encoding. And that flies in the face of simplicity. We should never do that.
Yeah, Carsten Bormann, I hope nobody comes up and brings up deterministic encoding here because we don't need it. Beltran's problem is kind of solved by making it clear in our minds what are encoding constraints because we have to.
Could you stand a little closer to the mic, please, Karsten?
I'm sorry. Beltran's problem is solved by making it clear in our minds which parts are encoding constraints, and there we need help from the encoder We cannot encode that ourselves or write a new encoder, of course. And which are data model restrictions. And since all of this on the slide, except for the first one, are data model restrictions, we get to decide, but we also should be very conscious about what we decide, like the floating point issue that Mike brought up. I don't have an opinion on this issue, but it has come up a million times in the models that I've been working with.
Okay. Do we have anybody else in queue?
Yeah.
Who's in? I can't
Bjorn?
see.
Remote.
Ah,
Who is it?
Bjorn Helm.
Bjorn? You're,
No, no, not in queue.
okay, not in queue.
Asking for slides.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm not hearing any objections other than a small concern about the map keys from Mike Jones, which we can take offline. But I'm not hearing people saying that they really don't want to implement elements of this proposal. I can talk with Beltrame about what's required in terms of indeterminate length. But I did receive, several people who thought that this was generally a good idea to prevent certain classes of attacks, which I can enumerate in the security consideration section. Okay, next. Okay, so there's an error on the slide, which I'll get to. But like I said, there are no major normative changes that we needed to make since the last cycle. The only normative section which is missing is decoy digests, which I plan to get around to before the end of November and may even get done this week. We have a couple issues which are blocked by early IAN registration, so I'd like to go ahead and start that. And we have some implementations. We actually have there is not currently an active JavaScript implementation, but I think that's going to get fixed. We have 1.5 Python implementations and a Rust implementation, and I will be building a test harness for us to check a bunch of scenarios. That's going to go up on a new repo, and if I can get a repo on the IETF WG Spice organization, I'll do it there. So if you're interested in implementing, if you have an implementation but you're not ready to go public and want to send me an anonymous message and ask how you can download the repo of the interop repo and start using it, please contact me. I'd be delighted to have as many implementations as possible and thoroughly test this spec. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Oh, do I have another slide? It says
You do.
next steps.
Steps.
Yeah, that's it. I kind of already talked
Basically
about
what you
this.
just said, yes. All right, last but not least, architecture. Leif, I think this is you.
Yeah.
It's
so
where
we-
everybody's been standing for the,
Yeah, I
whole
wasn't
meeting.
paying attention. Sorry. So, yeah, I just realized we kind of screwed up on the naming because we presented this at the last IETF, and then, we had feedback from the room indicating that people were happy to adopt the draft, and then we kind of renamed it. I was doing this as an individual submission at the time, and then we took on two additional authors, which is the only reason we made any progress, quite honestly, right? So Tim and Brent. So there is this draft is a fairly major rewrite, especially when it comes to terminology of the last one. But let's switch to the next. So the idea here is that we're trying to put together some normative language to describe what the third-party model is, or the three-party model is for verifiable digital credentials, and to create some neutral terminology to go with it. Next slide. So why are we doing this? Well, there's no point in having an architecture if it doesn't actually exclude stuff. So we're actually trying to figure out what distinguishes the three-party model from, say, email, right? Why isn't, like, what is different from any kind of store and forward messaging system? And to put that on paper, the consumers of this, I mean, we actually believe that we know that there are government entities out there who's trying to put this into action, and they're writing their own language around what they're actually, what they want or what they're trying to build. And it is of varying quality. And we actually think there is value in the market for making this succinctly describing this in a succinct way. Next slide, please. So differences between this version and the one that I pushed out last time. Well, better terminology. We kind of dropped we're really trying to get away from using the term wallet, right? Not necessarily for any religious reasons, but because it actually helps to, just like we have with email and HTTP, to put some neutral language around what the roles are, and try to get away from terminology that is already overlaid with various semantics. And of course, to have clean or cleaner normative language. I predict that this is where we're going to need a little bit more work. I don't think we're quite there yet with normative language, but the terminology is actually, in my opinion, is actually pretty good. So this is the new. Again, we screwed up the naming. We renamed the draft. We renamed the repo, and didn't think that we actually have to get this approved. So, so I guess this is a long way of saying, can you please adopt this so we can let you review it? Yeah, it's a little ass backwards. But I dropped an email just now to the mailing list that has the link to the GitHub repo, that has all of the sort of the build artifacts, so you can go read the draft. The question is, what do you guys want to do from the chairs? Do you want us to publish a new version of this, with a draft Johansson or draft Tim or something, right? And then adopt that version, or do you want to do an adoption call on the last one, or do you want to do an adoption call on the mailing list based off of what's on GitHub?
Well, I kind of want people to have a chance to read it.
Yeah. So give us yeah, so we'll dump a draft with a clean name, and then you'll adopt that, right? We can do an adoption call on that, right? All right, we'll do that. How many people have read it? I guess. Well,
They haven't
there's
had a
no
chance.
They haven't had a chance, exactly. Right? They read the last one, right?
Yeah, but it's very different.
Yeah, and it's very different. All right, you get a new draft out with some non-working group name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. All right, that's it.
All right. And I believe that was the last thing on our agenda today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Continue to track what's happening in GitHub. Use the mailing list. That's what it's for. And if you have any questions for the chairs, you can find us on Slack or email. Go get some coffee. Have a great rest of your day. I don't sit in here. I can leave room. Leave room. I could. All right. And yeah, go ahead. They look good. Thank you. You did a great job.